Welcome to Powered by People, the podcast where the industry leaders finally answer our questions. It's hosted by me, Abbey Graham, the co-founder and director at Everec, a specialist recruitment company within the EV charging and renewable sector. The podcast gets into the careers, the journeys, the motivations and the inspiration of all of the leaders within this space, and I'm very excited to tell you their stories. Let's get into it. Today's guest is the MD of Mer, Alex Hinchcliffe. He tells us his journey through recruitment, personal training, and then how he landed in the position he is today as the MD of Mer. We go through all of the ups, the downs, and how he got to be where he is today. Really excited to have him on and for you to hear this journey. Alex Hinchcliffe, welcome to Powered by People.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Yeah, very excited to get into it and talk about history, past, where we're going to in the future. One quick short fire question that I ask all the guests. Would you say that you're currently running your business, or is your business running you?
That's a good opening gambit. Yeah. I think the way of the world today means that the market, the jobs, the environment is running everybody. It's very, very difficult to have complete control, isn't it, over your own destiny at the moment. I certainly do what I can to try to do that, but if you're not adaptive and dynamic to the changes, then you just get left behind, don't you? So,
I agree.
Yeah, it's quite reactive, I think.
Very much so, yeah. No control over anything. There's so many moving parts, and I suppose it depends what day you ask someone on as well, depending on how they feel
That's
about
true.
it. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Certainly have good days and bad days in terms of control, but yeah, they sometimes spiral quite quickly.
Yeah, definitely. Very good answer. Okay, perfect. And talk me back through to little Alex when you were younger. What were you like as a kid? What was growing up like for you?
So I moved around a lot. So a single parent family. My mum worked for a company that sold ATMs, the cash hole in the wall, and moved around a lot with her job. So I lived in Leeds, Sheffield, London, Birmingham, and then gravitated towards Leeds around about the age of 10, 11-ish, something like that, and then set down roots. I was mad keen on sports, tennis, football, golf, most racket sports, most hand-eye coordination sports, into all that sort of stuff for a long time. And Leeds was a great place to grow up, and that's where I've ended up full circle coming back to and where I am now after being in other places along the way on the journey.
Yeah, I think the sport thing is going to be a huge point of everything throughout these podcasts. It's what seems to drive people. I'm really keen to understand what makes people tick and how you become as successful as you have. Do you think sport has done that for you? Is it a competitive streak?
100%, yeah. I think my first career role, I think the competitiveness of wanting to win on the sports field carries immediately over into the work environment, doesn't it? And I think from day one, minute one, it was right. Who's the contender? Who else could be the best in the room? And then target that person, go for it, and set your barometer high from day one.
That ego thing comes into it, definitely. I think when you've had sport or you've had something that hasn't worked out, or I don't know, what was your dream job? Was it to be a footballer?
I think I was completely lost when I started my career. I interestingly fell into recruitment quite early on.
I did see that when I was doing some planning. I wasn't expecting that.
But I actually did a degree in public relations because I thought it was quite open, quite diverse. And as a university student, I was quite into event promotions and worked in bars and nightclubs amongst sort of DJ circuits and various bits and pieces. And I wanted to help some of my friends that were bedroom DJs to get a head start, and I joined a public relations firm straight after I graduated, and it was so corporate and different to what I anticipated post university that I just felt actually that wasn't for me, and I only lasted about a month. And the reason I gravitated towards recruitment was it's an opportunity to write your own ticket, it's uncapped commission, there was opportunity to earn money and earn money quickly. So it felt like a good place to cut my teeth and just figure things out. And I guess that was one of 3 mini careers that I've had throughout my life. So I spent quite a long time in recruitment once I was in. Really enjoyed lots and lots of it. It took me to Australia. So that was fun. I opened new offices in the UK as well. I started in Leeds and set up a Newcastle office, which was really exciting, where didn't used to be one. And then, my opportunity with that company took me across to Sydney as well.
How crazy. What kind of recruitment did you do?
So at the start, it was agency type of day-to-day teachers. So temporary teachers. So it was all about volume and being on the phone and rattling through phone calls as very early start before schools opened and ringing round and do you have any absences today? Do you need any teachers? And so it was all about how many days you could get booked in terms of the leaderboard. It became more kind of specialised and permanent recruitment, and then obviously office management along the way. But that high volume, high energy type of environment suited me at the beginning and was a good foundation, good launchpad.
Yeah, how interesting. I didn't realise that. You do have to be a certain kind of person to be in recruitment. I think it's not for everyone, is it? It's challenging and there's a lot to it, and you'll have to be sprinting a marathon at all times to be successful in it, I think.
Yeah.
So I know you mentioned there you got into recruitment, it was kind of good money, uncapped commission. Has that always been a focus for you? What is your why?
That's a good question. I think it was then early. When you first start out and you have kind of nothing and need to build quickly, it's probably a key driver. I think it's also, once you kind of get married and have children, it becomes absolutely fundamental as well. I think where I am in my life now, it would be more around job satisfaction and having a social value and a purpose. So my career's jumped around and chopped and changed a little bit. And after the global financial crisis around 2006-7ish, when I was in Sydney, recruitment was a pretty tough industry to be in, and there was a lot of redundancy. I took what I anticipated to be a short-term career sabbatical, and I went and retrained as a personal trainer for a number of reasons, just personal interest and something to kill time for 6 months until the market recalibrated and got itself back together again, and a skill that I would hopefully learn for life that I could apply to myself and use. It turned out that I fell hopelessly in love with that industry and stayed in it for 10 years. And it was the helping people element of it and seeing real-time, real-world results in terms of getting unhealthy people healthy, getting overweight people slimmer, fitter, healthier, more mobile, injured people rehabilitated, sports people more proficient in what they do or achieving goals or running marathons, that kind of thing. And then I moved back to the UK, and the opportunity in the fitness industry in the UK, certainly in Leeds, was nothing like as expansive and diverse and well remunerated as it was in Sydney. So I kind of was ushered back into a corporate world so that I could bring enough money into the household to support the lifestyle that the family had become accustomed to, which meant going back into a corporate environment. And that was really the reason that I opted to go into the clean tech renewable industry, because of that sustainability agenda and the opportunity to make a mark, to add value, to contribute to future generations, to make an imprint and have a legacy to look back on that I can be proud of, rather than just jumping back in for the sake of it, really.
Yeah, no, throughout that, it sounds like actually they're helping people and leaving a mark and a legacy and doing something good. And I guess job satisfaction is a huge part for you. Strangely, recruitment is a lot of that. You are helping people
Uh-huh.
get new jobs. You
Yeah.
do get satisfaction. You may get some abuse now and again, but the majority of it, you're getting people jobs, you're changing their lives, and it's a really lovely thing. Similarly with sport, if
Yeah.
the amount of people that you must have changed their lives of, like you say, habilitation or making sure that they were the best version of themselves, and then now into EV and sustainability, it's making a difference, isn't it? It's difficult and a small part of what needs to happen, but
Yeah.
at least you can go to bed at night feeling like, do you know what, I'm actually doing something quite important.
It's fundamentally what's underpinned the reason that I'm in this space for sure. And I think in particular, that's why I gravitated towards Mayor, with the ownership and origins in the Nordics and owned by Statkraft, because of their ethics and values and the sustainability agenda. They're massive producer of renewables, and there's a circular economy of using Statkraft generated energy through the network in Mayor. The size of the company and it's the security that brings was also a pull factor, but fundamentally it was the company ethos that really drove me. I think there are other businesses in the industry that were more financially driven, and certainly a lot of Me Too companies that came along could see that there was potentially a buck to be had and joined the bandwagon. But for me, it wasn't about an emerging industry and the opportunity to be had in it. It was the underlying reasons that were attractive, so that I could add value and get that satisfaction. Yeah,
Definitely. So tell me about Mer for those that don't know. What did the company do?
yeah. So Mayor is an EV charging charge point operator that operates across multi countries. Its origins originate in Oslo, in Norway. It's underpinned by Statkraft, a big renewables generator with a global footprint. It's a Norwegian sovereign wealth fund that's operated for 120 years or so. And Mayor was born around 14, 15 years ago in Oslo as a subsidiary, an incubator company, investment from Statkraft to build something, a new technology. The Norwegians were a bit ahead of us in terms of that e-mobility sector, and it's a much more sort of proliferated environment from EV and e-mobility than mainland Europe and certainly the UK, although we're catching up now. So it was, Mayor's vision was to be a full services provider when I joined them, which was to have like a public charging network, but also a resale business to workplace fleet depot customers, behind the fence charging, if you like. And then therefore there was a solution for everybody. At one stage it was also single home, multi-home, everybody that needed EV charging, there was a solution at Mayor. And I think that all-encompassing ambition and vision was attractive in terms of helping everybody, right, with whatever their needs could be. When the UK business was going through its genesis, everything was about growth. Everything was about scaling. It was about getting your sockets in the ground. It was having a network to hang your hat on, to get a footprint, to get a flag in the ground, if you like, to then build and compete. And the ambition, driven by Statkraft and aggressive investment ambition, was to be a top 10, top 5 competitor in every market that it operated in. Really exciting times to join a business like that with the right, ethical underpinning. And actually, that ethical parent company got us a seat at the table at many of the big sort of opportunities in the market. And then it's more about the sort of interpersonal relationships. So Mayor started out life as a full services provider, but then as I've been there and as I moved into the MD position, we've gone through several periods of change. And whilst we've gone through M&A in terms of acquiring Elmtronics around 3 years ago, give or take, and kind of amalgamating that into the Mayor Full Services operating model, it was about transitioning an electrical contractor business to become more of a private side CPO to offer that service to a wide range of B2B customers. And then as we embraced, I guess, market conditions changes, cost of borrowing became higher, the shift in growth and scalability transformed more towards a pathway to profitability, which was the sort of more fundamental driver. So it's been an interesting change journey, and one where you've had to be adaptive. But very recently, Mayor's gone through the flip side of that M&A process, and having bought Elmtronics those years ago to work on a scaling model as the market shifted, very unexpected for me, we've gone in a different direction, and Statkraft's ultimate direction and goals have changed, and they're looking to strip back and focus on core, and that is developing generation assets, renewable generation assets, and the subsidiary companies, the incubator companies that they've been funding and developing and growing, that maybe take a little bit longer to realise profitability. The shareholders, the Norwegian public, and the new CEO in there has decided that now is not the time to focus on that agenda. It's to be profitable immediately, and to look to divest wherever possible the less profitable longer term clean tech companies that they've also got a ownership of. So it's not a secret that we've recently sold one of those businesses, public charging, to BEV.
Yeah.
So it's been a tumultuous ride along the way.
I can imagine, yeah. And I think as someone, we'll get onto it later, but I know you've been there for a long time, through like the sales roles, through to MD.
Yeah.
So it's something that must sit very close to your heart, and something that you've grown from scratch. So I guess there's the emotional side of it, then also obviously the financial and the MD side of your job is to be making sure that the company is as profitable as possible. So there's kind of two levels to it. But I think, there's definitely going to be a lot more mergers and acquisitions in the industry. It's something that's going to have to happen for us to move forward, I think. Like you said before, Mer was originally doing everything, and now they've understood or realised what they are most profitable in, what they're better at, and they're sticking to that. And it makes sense, it makes commercial sense, but it doesn't mean that it's easy for people that work there, nor easy for any redundancies that happen, or I guess the fear that starts to spread in the industry is, how sustainable is this? Is my job going to be safe? So what's been the hardest parts of that for you, would you say?
It's a good question. I think probably the hardest thing is to try to detach yourself from an emotional attachment. Like you said, I've been with the business for more than 4 years. I've held a number of different roles in there. I think when I joined the company, I was the 10th person in, and joined as a sales director to try to drive the business forward. At the time, the Mayor penetrates new markets and gets into new geographies largely through M&A. And so the acquisition business that allowed Mayor to enter the UK market, they bought a company called Vattenfall Infall, which was very much focused on the local authority public sector environments, and putting in fast chargers on street in council car parks, that kind of thing. I joined the business to try to redirect towards rapid and ultra rapid charging in the sort of commercial landowner space, in what was already, even then, quite a tough competitor environment. So that side of that initial kind of sales director journey was really exciting, because the market was buoyant, there was lots of opportunity, there was a lot of uncapped opportunity and new areas to explore. I think, the difficult bit is always when there's changes. I think restructuring, downsizing is exceptionally difficult, and then to try to retain the motivation and keep a strong culture within the business when you've gone through that. I think we've built an amazing, resilient workforce, and really inwardly focused on culture and team dynamics to make sure that we could cope with those kind of resizing scenarios that ultimately were essential to hit that path to profitability. And I think those communications are difficult, but they are factual and people do kind of understand them. But it's difficult if you're the leader in a company that is trimming and downsizing rather than accelerating and growing and scaling. And a lot of my leadership time has been very much as the industry's been in a downturn, and it's all been a lot of those kind of difficult scenarios. As I said, I joined when there was 10 people in the business. We at one point scaled the public business to close to 50 people when we were full focused on scaling. We acquired the Elmtronics business, and I think that got up to 120 something in terms of numbers. So the collective was a really quite sizable UK operation, and I think then we've slowly trimmed and refined and restructured to make the business more fit for profitability, more investable, but as much as that has a purpose and a direction and it's needed, it's still difficult when the communication to the business is, we've got reduced ambition, we are not scaling at the same levels, we don't need the same volume of people, but we have to operate in a different way in order to continue to exist and to get that buy-in, to show that we are on a pathway to profitability, and that means reduction in headcount, more efficiencies from people, and being more selective about the way that you approach the market. So utilisation, for example, is absolutely critical in terms of public network, building sites that actually get proliferation and usage and good income, so that profitability is quick, and therefore being more selective about what you build. In a really competitive environment, that's really difficult. We had to reinvent ourselves a little bit on the Mayorfleet Services side as well. Talked earlier about a full service provision across all sectors. Some of those market sectors, in order to operate effectively in all of them, we needed a team that was too big to balance the books. So we had to cut single home. We decided to cut multi-home. We decided to reduce our focus on workplace charging, where perhaps there was a higher level of competition and more of a race to the bottom on price, and improve our capability around complex installs and understanding the requirements of bespoke fleet operators that needed to scale, and to bring in technical experts that could offer the right expertise for those businesses to thrive and to make that transition, which meant a smaller customer base but a higher degree of complexity and specialisation, which needed a smaller team but a team that could become profitable. So that messaging was important, but the journey to get there and resizing those teams was really tough.
Yeah, especially going against your moral compass. All you want to do is help people and do
Yes.
good and be supportive. And
Yes.
I will also vouch for you. We've not always worked together, and there's been many occasions I've maybe tried to steal some of your employees. And one of the only businesses I would say that would not entertain it. You must have created such a loyal culture and such an inherent just belief of what they were doing, and not necessarily always because of the money either. I think a lot of the time it was probably just the teams that they worked with and the culture internally. So it's terribly sad to see from the outside of when there's something so good from the inside out. I think a lot of the time there's a rot in there, and it's not necessarily the best culture, and that's probably why it ends badly. But to have gone the other way around is actually really tough to have seen, and I know some of the amazing people that work at Mer and the job that you've done there. So yeah, I can imagine that's been not the nicest. In terms of, I guess, like you can see from the outside and why everyone works with you thinks the way they do about you, but what do you think got you from the sales director role to the MD role? Why do you think they chose you, and why did you think you could do it?
So that's a good question. I took on a pseudo MD role for the charging business. They called it Director of Public, which was looking after all sales and operations. So it was a step up, a stepping stone role, if you like, from sales director to managing everything other than kind of shared services, all the kind of deliverables on the ground. So I'd worked historically in the ICP IDNO space a little bit, and had a reasonably good grasp of operations, although I was definitely more focused on sales, on commercial, but I stepped up into that role and took on more responsibility. And we had in the year that I made that step up, we were able to achieve our operational targets, our socket targets, the number of installations that we were looking to make that year. Even if there was a couple of ideas in there that were a little bit cheeky, we did some gentrification of existing AC sites and put DC sockets in some of the areas where we thought that they'd get better usage out of that, and used a few kind of tricks, if you like, to hit our targets. But I think the sort of recognition of strategic change in order to be able to hit those targets and meet those operational objectives demonstrated that there was more to it than just sort of sales and commercials, and the leadership element of that, and managing a number of other stakeholders rather than just a pure sales team, demonstrated that there was more leadership skill in there. The MD position happened a little bit by accident, really. Our MD at the time, who's still a really good friend, Anthony Hind, his wife had an opportunity with the embassy in Switzerland, I think it was, and so the family just decided to repatriate, but that's where she's from originally, I think. So it just created an unexpected vacancy, and I was asked to step into the role on an interim basis, whilst the business searched for a successor. But as it turned out, I moved into the role. It went well. We continued to deliver, and they decided that they didn't need to continue the search, and they had who they needed already. But actually, when the M&A activity started to bring in Elmtronics, which then became Merfleet Services, because I was relatively fresh into the MD role, they decided to scan the market for somebody with a bit more experience, that could potentially come in and have an overseeing role across both UK businesses. So that happened, and I moved kind of back into the director of public charging, which was, as I said, like a pseudo MD role of one of the two UK businesses. For whatever reason, the incumbent that came in, the MD that looked after both businesses, didn't stay as long as expected, moved away, and then they came knocking again to say, would you potentially look at an interim role again across the whole of the UK? The people on the Merfleet Services side of the business have all said that they'd like it to be you that steps across. So I think there's a lot on the stakeholder relationship side, the way that you treat and work with people internally gives you that opportunity. And I think if you remain true to yourself and credible, that stands you in good stead. And so my interim roles became permanent on multiple occasions within Mer. So I've moved around quite a lot, but it's I'm really grateful for Mer for the policy of recognising what you have within, and not necessarily always going. They did do a full market exercise and interview external candidates, but looked at them objectively, and instead of just going down that external route, give somebody internal a chance, which is refreshing, I think.
Yeah, it is refreshing. And I was going to ask you what your best piece of advice would be, because there's a lot of people that are going to be listening to this, I assume, that are in the industry right now looking to move up to more senior roles, or looking to even get into the industry. But it sounds like what your advice is, just be true to yourself, be a nice person, and genuinely, if you're someone that people want to work with, that usually does you well. Is that right?
I think absolutely. Be honest, be credible. I think so long as you're credible and people can buy into you, then that goes a long way. It allows you to build trust. I think trust is fundamentally important, and if you've got the backing of the teams, because you're honest and open with them. I spend a lot of time, because I coached people as a PT, as a strength coach. I do a lot of mentoring and take the one-to-ones very seriously. Spend a lot of time listening and understanding the challenges of team members, and trying to coach and overcome obstacles and objections. And my way of management is very much, okay, don't just bring me problems and drop them at my door. By all means, bring me problems, but bring me your 2 or 3 best ideas on how to resolve them, and then we can kick those ideas around and find the best way forward. But if everybody just brings 3 or 4 problems to my door every one-to-one session, I'm just going to be overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So it's about retraining the organisation to be self-problem solving, and then they'll hopefully cascade that downstream to their teams, and that builds a culture of, okay, bring me a problem, but bring me 2 or 3 sort of solutions as well. I think that goes a long way. And if you've established trust, people can openly talk to you about what those challenges are. And the only way you can problem solve within an organisation is to understand where those challenges are and fix them. So that's always been the way that I've worked, and I think that's got me the buy-in to end up where I am. I didn't set out to want to become the MD of Mayor necessarily. It's kind of a little bit of a happy accident, but it's a recognition for a job well done as well.
No, I completely see that. And I think it's like training people on critical thinking a lot of the time, isn't it?
Yes, that's a better way of putting it.
Yeah, no, it's the ability to be able to see a problem, but then understand the solution. And you might need help with the solution of how to get there. But as long as you have a few ideas as to how to best go around fixing it, it makes sense. And I think it filters a lot into personal life as well. I think the mentorship that you probably give people for work, it's a two-way street. They probably bring in things that are affecting them in their day-to-day lives. If they want to be more confident, if they want to be more structured, if they want to be going to the gym more, it tends to be the case that if you can personal train someone physically, you can then personal train somebody in a business capacity too.
I would suggest so, yeah. I mean, when I started my career in fitness, I was a bit older than some of the other trainers, and so the demographic that I went after was probably the more affluent and more kind of senior stakeholder. And so you're dealing with MDs and CEOs where, as a 30-year-old working with a 50-year-old, you're the boss in that environment, so you have to take ownership and provide them with leadership and direction, and that gives you the confidence to work with stakeholders at all levels. It's really interesting, actually. I thought moving into a fitness arena would really limit me from being able to make the break back into the corporate environment, and I put quite a big sort of stigma over myself as unemployable from a corporate perspective because of the direction that I'd taken and spent 10 years in exile from the corporate environment. But as I started to analyse the skill set that you develop in that different sector, actually problem solving the mechanics of the human body and understanding fundamentally where something's broken in the chain that needs to be resolved to get it back to perfect function. If you look holistically at a company, it operates in much the same way. If one department's out of sync, out of order, not performing, it's a bit like a body that's out of kilter. And in order to become a more effectively functioning athlete, a company needs to be looked at in the same way so that you can drive and improve performance. And actually there's a number of parallels that translate around working with people, communication, coaching, encouragement, but also the strategic and the analytic piece. So I think irrespective of what industry you're in, you said what advice would you give? I think try and draw on your life experiences, and when you think perhaps they're not relevant or you need to overlook them and focus on something new, maybe step down, start again. Actually, the fundamental building blocks of what makes you a great leader are all about your experiences along the way, wherever that's been. And a lot of those skill sets are transferable, but you've got to look a bit deeper to find them, perhaps. Yeah,
it's connecting the dots, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think people use it as two separate things, me inside of work, me outside of work, and they're something I don't kind of correlate. But the more you try to see it as a holistic overview, I think probably doors will start to open a little bit easier because you'll understand yourself and the world that you're in. Definitely. Okay. And I think just going back to Mer, what happens now? Where does Mer go from here? What's the focus?
Yeah. So I think, there's no secret that Statkraft is looking across the market for investment in Mer. There are different sort of options out there. You've mentioned that there's consolidation going on, that the M&A activity in the market is rife at the moment. We've seen that happening in the EV space in the UK recently with little bits and pieces of movement. My focus at the moment is to get wholly behind the fleet business, continue business as usual, to continue to drive the improvements that we're seeing. We've had a record start to the year, which is fantastic. It's been catalysed, if you like, by the depot charging fund, which has allowed us to really get going with some major customers. And that area of the business at the moment is absolutely booming. It's thriving. It needs that continued sustained support of the government, of the sector, for more funding to come in, to give confidence in fleet managers to actually make the transition. So I think whilst opportunities for additional investment and how that can take Mare to the next level, if you like, with potentially new ownership or new investment that unlocks some of the shackles to allow it to perform even more effectively, we just continue to do the best that we can with the customers that we've got, and keep going after the market and keep winning, keep succeeding. Meanwhile, whatever goes on in the background, we kind of wait and see a little bit in terms of what the future holds. But I think that's probably not dissimilar for a lot of businesses, that there is uncertainty and there is activity and M&A activity going on, and you don't quite know what the future holds right now.
No.
So all you can do is be the best version of yourself and see where that takes you, I think.
Yeah, good output to have.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a lot of change, but where change and uncertainty comes opportunity, and I'm very optimistic about the future. I think if the fleet side, the government things that have came in terms of the legislation and the funding, I think there's only one way that we can go, and it is forward. And however we get there around the way, we'll just have to see. But I think, yeah, as long as you have a good, honest reputation in the industry and the business keeps that, whichever business it is, that's all that you can do.
I think so, yeah. Credibility goes a long way. I think reputation, how you handle the customers. One of the things that Mare really prides itself on is the aftermarket relationships. We've got unbelievable retention rates with the customers that we've worked with, right the way through sort of Elmtronics into Mare Fleet Services. There's a real strong history and repeat business there, and that's not an accident. It's about customer handling, and I think fundamentally that's the most important piece. We've sometimes lacked, I guess, the most sort of leading edge software, but make up for that by the integrity within the business to problem solve and to work with the customers to find bespoke solutions, or to be reactive if there are challenges and resolve those problems. And it's about being available, being on call to support that customer. I think in public charging, utilisation and uptime is important. I think in fleet, uptime is critical. If you have a number of chargers out at any one time and the fleet is disabled and can't do the duty cycle that it's been earmarked to do, and there's an electrical fault, and that's a huge impact on operational activity. It's not just a defunct charger that diminishes revenue. It means the vehicle can't do its job, and you're not delivering. So the importance of delivering and maintaining and having that capability to support customers to the best of our ability is what everything's built on, and I think that carries over.
Yeah, definitely. I think moving on to a point that you brought up before, you've obviously done a lot of hiring in your time. And hiring is such a huge part. You mentioned that Mare do a really good job of looking internally and seeing who's there and trying to promote that. I guess just advice on that, really, and what you do look for internally at your team before actually going out to market, and how others can do the same.
I think we have changed our recruitment policy along the way. It's a really good question. It's an interesting question. I think I've been lucky in terms of that internal opportunity and looking within. I think as the market's changed and there's been hiring freezes because of a lack of opportunity for funding to go external, that's almost to some extent been born out of necessity as well. Maybe I've benefited from that. It's hard to say, I guess, but we definitely had quite a heavy management team in Mare Public Charging. We had a number of leaders, a team with a number of captains, if you like, quite a lot of senior stakeholders. And the way that we decided to recruit from that was to bring and nurture a bit of a grad hiring policy. And if you've got a blank canvas and you can shape and develop those individuals, then they can also come with versatility. So there's a term that they use in the Nordics, actually, which I think is a really good one, and I'm going to coin it here. You need to hire people that can be a Swiss Army knife. So they're multifaceted, they can wear a number of hats, they can do a number of jobs. There's often a startup mentality within the CPO space because it's so dynamic. It needs to be agile. You need to be able to react and move quickly, change what you do. And if the strategy changes internally, people maybe need to pick up different roles. If something isn't working, isn't as profitable as you'd like it to be, you might have good talent in that role, and rather than lose them, just recoach them and move them in a different direction to operate something else. And we feel that then gives them a more rounded CV, makes them more attractive, makes them more hireable, makes them more diverse for future roles. So I think as a strategy that went well. We also looked to hire really, really bright sort of first-class honours graduates, and we probably took in an influx of several of those at one point in time, but they all have aspirations to be the next CEO.
Yeah.
And
Love
so,
that energy, though.
as brilliant as they were, we probably didn't have the right blend of abilities. Sometimes you need more functional doers rather than aspirational superpowers and leaders.
Definitely.
So you have natural attrition, and you can't have everybody promoted 3 times a year and accelerating through the company, because there just simply isn't that number of opportunities in the company, in the hierarchy, to accommodate. So we found that when you bring in the super talent, yes, there's room for 1 or 2 of those people in key areas within the business, and they really need nurturing, and they take a lot of energy out of you, and that's fine. But you can't have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of these characters, because there isn't the capacity within the organisation to have that. You have to have a blend. So we opted for trying to work on the culture, the dynamic, and have a range of different sort of abilities, and changed our recruitment policy along the way a little bit, but found our way there kind of naturally. Still going probably more at kind of grassroots level, so that we can shape and mould. But when there's critical hires, if a key leader or a manager leaves, then I think you need to sort of bring in external. But I like the idea of a blank canvas to paint on.
Yeah. And growing from within, I think that's maybe why you got so much high retention and loyalty,
Yeah.
because they see people doing that. And I think, people complain about recruitment as a whole. It feels like it's such a hard thing for the industry to grasp. But obviously from a recruiter, it's very simple. You need to have good loyalty, you need to pay well, and you need to have retention, because that overall will reduce your fees. And you then can't be looking for a unicorn, which it sounds like you don't. You know what the skill sets that are needed, but if you're happy to put time and effort and management into them, then you can have people from different industries, you can have different diversities. So is that something, have you ever heard the term unicorn, and do you think that's something that you try to avoid?
Possibly. What you said actually triggered something else. I think when you do hire elite level talent, often I talked about the time that it takes spending with them, that they want to spend time with the leadership team and to have that mentoring, and that's justified. But what we also found is they will suck as much information out of you as possible, and then take that on, and then, like you said, maybe leverage that to go and find an opportunity that pays more or get them to the next level. So you can end up being a stepping stone for career ladder climbers if you're not careful in terms of that hiring environment. So having that mixed demography, looking for people, I guess the interview leans more towards, why do you want to join the business, and understanding their motivations, and are they in for the long haul. In recruitment, that's probably good for you, but I noticed that the the longevity, the tendency, or the duration in role was maybe once sort of expectation of 3 years, pulled down to 2 years, pulled down to 18 months even. And we had such a high turnover of people in industry because it was deemed, I guess, okay to move with that level of frequency. And in Mayor, certainly under my leadership, I was looking for stability and retention and to keep the right people for as long as possible, so that you've got that core DNA and you can keep delivering and have that dependency. So I think, having the opportunity to grow from within. In terms of a unicorn, finding... so can you explain a little bit more about what that is? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, because I think everyone says that there's a talent or a skills shortage, or that's the interpretation, because people really struggle to find talent or to hire.
Yeah.
In recruitment terms, we call... So there'll be a job description that just describes the most perfect person. And this is where we have issues with diversity, with not being able to find the right person, with the role being open for, 6 months plus. And then also, usually those roles, you do hire them and then the retention isn't great because their expectations are too high. And those kind of roles also, you don't allow people to come in from different industries because they have to have had EV charging, they have to have done this, have to have done that. And I think that's a big challenge within the industry, which you haven't typically used recruiters for specific roles, potentially because you haven't found it so hard to hire. So going back onto the hiring, is there certain things that you like to see in an interview when someone comes in? If they could prepare for something, what would you say?
I like it when they've researched the company and they know the ethos of the company, the drive, the history, and they've done a little bit of research on people and direction. So I do like to quiz people a little bit on, why us? Why have you chosen us? What do you know about us? And if it's a scattergraph approach and they've targeted a number of different businesses and haven't done their research, that turns me off pretty quickly. And then I think I like to understand what. Obviously, you're going to skills test that there's suitability for the role that they're coming in for, but I really like to dig into what sort of longevity have they got, what's their kind of short, mid and long term career ambitions, where do they see themselves, do you see yourself with this organisation in 5 years, or do you think that this is a stepping stone to somewhere else, and determining ambition level and what sort of company loyalty that we might expect, and underpinning what reasons they've got for why they're joining the business. Is it the industry? Is it the sort of emerging technology? And just getting under the skin of what drives that person and determining whether we think that that's going to be in keeping with the culture of the rest of the team and that they'll fit. I think it's what we want to really avoid is disharmony within a highly functioning team. And I think that's what took a long time to achieve, and through a little bit of natural attrition and through little bits of changing and org restructuring and managed and a really strong focus on culture and retention and spending time together outside of the office doing activities, that was fundamentally important. And so not breaking that is so important, I think, and that's really key to me, that the person really wants to join us. If it's just a job, if it's one of many interviews they're going for, then I'm a little bit turned off. And I know, that's perhaps a bit picky, but I think
it clearly works. Yeah, definitely. We spoke a little bit about how retention's really important and how you do look for that person to come in and want to stay, but I think it works on both sides. Businesses have to give somebody a reason to stay and have to give people projected career paths so that they can look forward and see where they're getting to and where they're going, which in some roles is more difficult than others. Sales roles, KPI roles, you can kind of see the trajectory, but I think it's really important to spend time with those people in all different industries or sections of the business equally, so they know where they're going to, because of course retention, I think, is on both sides of it, and you obviously are really secure in knowing why they're coming into the business, that it is right for them and what they're going to get as you going to get out of both of the partnerships. So maybe that's why it's been such a beneficial relationship to kind of interview like that, because you obviously merge that from day one and set those expectations out. Going on to a little bit more of personal reflection.
Okay.
I think you've obviously had a lot of stressful jobs. You've done quite a lot in your career. What would you say keeps you sane?
I think trying to have a lot of variety in life. I've got two high octane children that are quite demanding, but we've managed to find a way to build that into family time. For example, we do a family martial arts class, which is quite good. So for the last 4 or 5 years, my wife and I and both boys have been 2 to 3 times a week doing. It's called Aegis. It's mixed martial arts, but it's a good release from corporate life and from family life. To have an activity that we can all do together. So often the boys will train together, and I'll train with Caroline a little bit. So I think it's important to do things together, which so that probably ticks that box. I try to make sure that I spend time individually with everybody in the family as well. So with my eldest son, I play a bit of golf and try and make sure that I take him out once a week as a minimum. And my youngest son is a mad keen footballer, so I make sure I take him to his training and his matches on a Sunday. And for me personally, my previous career in fitness means that I have to hit the gym 4 or 5 times a week.
Wow.
And if I don't do that, it drives me up the wall. So yeah, that's quite a lot to fit in.
Yeah. How many hours do you have in your day? How much of that?
Exactly. Not enough. So whilst that's hard, I think that probably does mean that you have to do really good sort of time management and planning. Mayor's great in terms of flexibility to build some of that in. I think the modern employer needs to recognise the flexibility required in sort of modern life, and with so much working from home, and you need to be able to nip out and do things during the day, but make up for that at other times in the day. So I think that sort of flexible work pattern is pretty critical. But without fitness, health, you can't be the best version of yourself. I think there has to be that escapism. There has to be that switch off. There's so much information overload and so many different digital interfaces that you're hit from in the modern living, that unless you make time to take a breath, step away, do work on your own well-being, I think certainly we've got lots of examples of overload and burnout where people do too much, not necessarily because we force that onto them, but people take it on, and it's just relentless. It's never ending, right? The people can be working in other countries, or that some people can start at 7 o'clock and finish at 3. The people that start at 10 o'clock finish at 6 and 7 o'clock, but the stream of messages and interactions is constant and consistent, right? All the way through the day. So learning to switch off at certain points in the day, diarising time, going for a wellness walk. One of the things I've just implemented recently is walkie-talkies, which is every other one-to-one I do with my team is more focused on them, what's going on personally, how are they feeling about the world, what's going on in their life, their family life, and we'll do it over the phone with headphones in and go for a walk to force people to go out, take a breath, get some steps, experience nature. From a mental well-being perspective, I think that's absolutely fantastic. And if you do alternate that kind of strategy, but have one of your sessions that might be a screen share, and it's more focused on corporate, on performance, on their team and how they're doing in their department, but equally to build those trusted relationships. If you just go for a walk and have a chat on the phone, and okay, you're not going to completely miss out on what's happening at work, but the focus is a little bit different, and you get to know your team much better, and what's going on in their world, and what's troubling them at home, and why they might be feeling like they're feeling and not giving their A game. So I think that's quite a good initiative that I would wholeheartedly recommend to everybody to do.
That's so powerful. I think people could take a lot from that. It's not something that I think is focused on too much in terms of ways in which it will affect people's actual retention and the way that they feel at work and how supported they feel. Like we said before, it's a collaboration of both. Work and home life are very interlinked, and if you get out and feel positive, feel supported, feel like you belong somewhere and someone actually cares, that's such a huge part in actually then feeling happy overall, because that's what we're all trying to do, isn't it? Just achieve peak happiness. And
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's often something that's lost sight of, isn't it? And I think that sort of post-COVID world and that sort of hybrid working and spending lots of time at home, not differentiating the home from the workplace is not a great place to be. So pushing people and forcing them to go out and be in the open air and getting a breath and getting some exercise as part of work, I think is really, really useful. And impactful in terms of productivity as well. Coming back after you've done that and then being able to, be in a position to switch back on and be more productive when you get back, the overall net gain instead of back to back to back, wall to wall to wall Teams meetings, a lot of the time they can be less productive when you fill the hour because there's an hour of a meeting in there. Whereas I think if you're a bit more selective about the way that you manage your diary and do something slightly more creative like that walkie-talkie, I think that's going to help rather than hinder.
Yeah. And the more, I guess, you're trusted or you feel trusted in your organisation to do more flexible work and go and pick the kids up from school and know that you'll make the time up. People typically, I know I always have in other organisations, I actually want to do a better job. I want to put more work in. You'll probably get more out of you because you are trusted and you do have that honesty and relationship there. So that clearly comes through in the leadership and management. Also, I was going to ask you, what did you have an actual EV charging company that you started yourself?
Yeah, that was how I got into the industry in the first instance. When I moved back to the UK, I'd been personal training in Sydney. I ran a really big sort of prestige fitness first in Bondi Junction as the personal training manager to about 55 trainers in one of the really big sort of flagship gyms in Australia and Sydney. And I came back to the UK and wanted to continue that profession. And I had a good look around and ended up joining David Lloyd clubs as a PT. Very quickly accelerated to become their fitness manager as well. But I was really doing a huge number of hours to try to get anything like the right kind of take home. But one of my clients that I was training was a bit of an entrepreneur who had a property developer, really. And he wanted to diversify into the clean tech area, and I trained him 3-4 times a week. And he kept saying, you want to get out of PT, you want to get back into the corporate. He bought himself a Tesla and was a bit of a visionary and could see that there was a market there in the quite early stages, and setting up an EV charging company could be profitable and exciting and a little bit different. So he said, if he was a silent funding partner, would I consider a complete career change and just setting up a business from scratch? So we literally, back of a fag packet, put together a little plan, fork in the road moment. Do you say yes or do you stick with what you're doing? Take the plunge, have a jump. So we went to a few expos and had a look at some software and hardware options and just went, okay, let's do this.
Go for it. Yeah, I was going to say another question was going to be, what's the biggest risk you've ever taken? And clearly that was it, because that's obviously been the key defining moment in all of this, as to how you got into it. And that lasted for a year or so, and then
no, that was a good sort of 2.5-3 years, I think.
Wow.
And I think the investor, we were looking at a few different environments. It was quite. We did some major milestones. We did the first 100 plus kilowatt DC charger in the UK outside of the Tesla network. We built, 100 or so location partners in a Yorkshire geography region. But I think even though the business plan said it wasn't going to be profitable for at least sort of 7 to 10 years because there's just not enough cars. I think the lack of revenue from the charging way back in sort of 2016-ish was so light that the investment was quite significant, and the backer just decided that he wanted to sort of stop and put the business into stasis, not continue to grow it, but to try and mature the assets that they had, which was not for me. I wanted to be working in a growth company. So that was the sort of reason there. And I thought I would expand my horizons and go and work for an ICP and IDNO in Sheffield and learn a bit more about high voltage grid connections and understand upstream of the meter how all the sort of technology and the real sort of big power worked. So that put me in good stead to then come back into industry with Mayor as a sales director to have that kind of more holistic view of the whole market, and gave me the sales and the operations piece.
Amazing. Yeah, sliding door moment. You could step through
massively.
it or not.
Yeah.
One more question. Give us a fun fact about yourself.
A fun fact. I used to do a bit of celebrity training in Sydney. So I worked with Hugh Jackman's wife, and I trained a couple of pop stars and, the TV series Home and Away.
No way.
So I used to train a few Home and Away actors, yeah.
What a claim to fame. That's
So
actually unbelievable.
It's a bit random. It's a different lifetime, isn't it? Different career.
You have lived 100 lives.
Yeah.
Haven't you? So many really pinnacle things as well. Like you've boxed and then moved on, and they would be someone's actual full careers, and you just had maybe about 3 of them.
10 year, yeah.
And you still look so young and great. So I'll tell your skincare routine after this.
Must be, yeah.
Amazing. And then to end, what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
That's a good question. I think there's probably a few. I think recently somebody gave me a good piece of advice, which is when a negotiation comes to a head and there's a silence in the room, the person that speaks first has lost, which I think is quite an interesting way of looking at things, isn't it? As soon as you open and start the conversation, potentially you're backpedaling and on the negative side and sort of backing down. So I don't know how much that can really be applied in all walks of life, but it's quite an interesting one that I'm going to try to adhere to a little bit more going forward. But I think if anything, it would be try to smell the roses along the way. Something my dad often says to me. You live your life at 100 miles an hour, 110%, and it's so hectic, it's so relentless, that if you don't sort of stop and realise and live in the moment a little bit, it can all zoom by before you even know you've missed it. And I think that's really important. That's certainly where I am at the minute, is take a breath, take some time, have some recognition about what you've got, and be less sort of reactive. So yeah, I would describe that as smell the roses along the way.
Yeah, about being present, I think, isn't it? And just taking in everything, reflecting on what you've done and what you've achieved, which you've done so much. And it's been so nice having you on. Thank you.
Thanks very much
for going into everything. And I'm looking forward to seeing what the next few years hold.